Welcome to the Stone Carvers Guild podcast. Here you will meet a variety of carvers working throughout North America. Drawing on our collective experience, we seek to share knowledge about this ancient art and to do our part to ensure that stone carving will play an important role in built environments for generations to come. So whether you are an experienced carver, new to the craft, or just curious, put on your safety goggles, open up your mind, and welcome to the workshop.
Are y'all in the same shop?
Yeah, we're at my studio. Yeah, Fort Wayne's way hipper than Indianapolis.
It's very nice.
It's cool. It didn't used to be that way, but I mean, they're employing me, so they got something going on.
Right.
They're doing lots of public sculptures, and the city has really dedicated time and money to getting the rivers cleaned up and developing along them. So we're getting a total influx of people from other places. I call it the Portlandia of, Fort Wayne is the Portland of Indiana.
You drive in and it's very clean. Things are very obviously well taken care of. Maybe because it's the start of the school year in this part of the country. I don't know. But
you came through the shittier place.
Oh my goodness!
The town, yeah, you got to go through and see the downtown and the West Central area. There was an art school here in the early 1800s, and I actually had it where my last studio was where that art school was. And so there's an arts district here that goes way, way, way back. And the city always had musicians, and it was full of artists. And, I wasn't raised an artist, but this is where it all happened for me.
So where are you from originally?
I'm from here originally.
Okay.
And I spent my life trying to get away. And on one of the traps coming back, I just picked up a piece of stone one day and banged away at it. And, that was the moment my life changed.
How old were you when that happened?
26. I was working for my father. I'd already lived in New York for 4 years after college. I was a white-collar bum. And I came back. My father had a business here. He had a bunch of stores. And it was always expected that I would go in the business. And I did not want to. And I said I'd come back for a year. And I came back for the year. And I was, coming back at 26 years old, having lived in New York City for 4 years. And now I'm working for my father. And I went out in the backyard and picked up a piece of limestone. I can see it now. I was barefoot. I sat down and picked up a hammer and a screwdriver, had it between my feet. And I went clack, clack, clack. And something snapped in the back of my head. And literally within a couple of months, I had met Tim Doyle. I started carving. I started taking figure drawing classes. I got accepted to the Art Institute of Chicago to get a master's degree in art, which I have a journalism degree in undergraduate.
Okay.
And I was in Chicago for the summer taking classes, and I met Walter, and then I got the job at the cathedral. So it all happened what feels like in a matter of moments, but it was over the course of a couple of months. But it really all went back to just clicking that first piece of stone and then meeting Tim and carving my first piece. And I was like, I don't want to do anything else. This is great.
Wow.
You said it clicked in the back of your mind there. Was there anything in particular? Was it just
I can't tell you. It was like seeing you could do this the rest of your life and not get it all. You can get this feeling anytime you touch the stone. And that's what it felt like. It was like this magic world that as soon as I had no idea that you could make a living, no idea the cathedrals existed. I took an art history class and learned about cathedrals and thought, wow, that's cool. And 6 months later, I'm working at one. So for, that 4-year period, and I'm sure, anybody you've spoken to that has had that kind of training, man, it is a steep learning curve. And when you're in it, I called it, I was high for 4 years. I was just, I hated the weekends. Let me get back to the cathedral. Wow. So it was life-changing. That's all I wanted to do. And, I never imagined that, if someone said, hey, Cary, you're going to grow up to be a stone carver someday or a sculptor, I would have said, what are you out of your, out of your mind there, pal? Seriously? Yeah, I still have friends that still go, how did that happen? But now it's, it's been 40 years.
It just kind of happened.
And
Who was all at the cathedral when you were there?
Patrick.
Okay.
sort of the senior carver.
A very young-looking Patrick.
Yeah, he was still gray back then, actually, and has still had that same hat. So who was there? They had just hired. We were part of a new gang. Patrick was there. There was a guy named Bill Booker who had been there about a year before I got there, and then there was a couple of us that had just shown up because they had figured out they could finish the cathedral, and the master agreed to hire on some people. Mm-hmm. People had been trying to get jobs there for years and years and years, and they just said no. And so just the weirdness of me ending up there, you know, is one of the great mysteries of my life, how that happened. But, you know, once you're there, you're entering this world, and I did not want to get out of it.
I'm looking at this photograph on your website.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's Vincent Palumbo sitting.
Yeah, it's
and
right here. There's
in
the
the background looking.
Oh yeah,
like up to no good.
Dude, that was like September. I started on the day after Labor Day. That picture was taken, I want to say within a week or two, because I'd just gone with the other guy in the beret, Kurt Kiefer. He had started the day after me. We were besties. And he always wore a beret, and I never wore hats in my entire life, and he did a hat. So I wore a beret. That's the last time I ever wore it. If you look at that picture, that'll be the last time I ever wore a beret. And then, I had to wear a hat every day. I mean, I used to have to get dressed to go to a job, and I loved going to work and putting on my carving clothes, and it was just, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe how cool it was to work there.
You definitely look like the cat that ate the canary. Like,
oh yeah, that was 4 years. I grinned like that. I would show up, I would go places, and people would say, "What's going on with you?" You know, I'd go to a party, or I'd be standing off to the side, and you know, I'd be in this sort of revelry of my own self-making, thinking, well, tomorrow I'm going to go finish that angel, and man, I'm going to make it alive. You know, you're playing God every day. It's the opera. You know, and then you're also crashing because, you know, you can't figure out how to get something right, or go, I got to carve that flat plane, you know. But I just walked around Washington with that, you know, cat that, you know, ate the canary.
Were there any projects that stood out during that time that you look back, or were they just all
whatever? There were so many that stood out. The first gargoyle that I got to do, there was 8 major gargoyles left on the building when I got there that had to be done. And we all knew that. One day they showed up with the half-scale plaster models. And man, we're all looking at those going, oh, cool. And then one day this truck shows up and brings these giant blocks of stone and sets them up in the yard. And one day, we're all kind of looking at them. And by this time, you know, sometimes we do angels for a couple of months, and you go, if I'm going to carve another angel, I'm going to kill somebody. And the master comes up to me and just kind of gruffly goes, go grab one of them plasters and go carve a gargoyle. And you don't go, how do I do that, sir? You just go, okay. And I'm thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. How am I going to do this? I've never done a carve a gargoyle. What, are you kidding me? I mean, you're all going through your mind. And then, you know, grab the model, look at that piece of stone, and, you know, you just start banging away at it. And I had 15 days to do it.
Is this gargoyle with the tongue hanging out? Is that the one?
Yep, that's the first one, and then I got to do the last one too. So everybody hated me because I got to do 2 of them. And that summer I lost like 30 pounds because all I wanted to do was carve. I got to carve these 2 gargoyles during this course of the summer. And I'm sure, I mean, well, I know I had people visiting from Indiana, and my friend's mom was on this church bus thing, and she went back to my friend Jeff and goes, Jeff, I think Cary has Marfan's disease. He's so thin, and you know, he looked really gaunt, and that was like, you know, I'd lost 30 pounds because all I wanted to do was carve, and it was just like, eating is an interruption in my life. And
so, what is the process of carving a gargoyle?
So you get this half-scale matte plaster model, and you look at it, and you go, and you get your calipers, and you go, okay, let me just sort of lay out the profiles on the face of the stone. And, you know, you draw on one side, and then you try to transfer it over the other, and you go, okay, now start removing the big chunks of stone that aren't within that profile. And it's like anything. It's just, but it's so damn big. I mean, there was times you're sitting on top of it and carving it like you're sitting on a horse. And other times, one of them has the anatomy, the one that the caveman, the last one I did, that's ripping open his stomach.
Yep.
I got an anatomy book and I actually put all the organs in the right place behind the rib cage. Nobody sees that. But I had to set up a 2x8 and put it at an angle and lie on it and spend the day kind of carving upside down. And so, yeah, it was just awesome.
How big are they?
Those are 8 feet long. They go into, so I would say 6 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. Something
and
like that.
Were they attached when you carved them, or were they?
Yeah, they're attached to the stones flare out. So they come from the corner, and so there's a rosette and a rosette on either side. So the way they balance, and then there's a big chunk of stone that stays behind in the wall because those things are cantilevered out, so they have to have a lot of weight on them.
Yeah.
So they were massive blocks of stone.
Wow.
Were they set in plates already?
No, they set them on the ground up on a scaffolding so that you could walk around it and get underneath it. And then we had, I built a scaffolding to get up on, you'd have to sort of get up on top of it and, work your way around it.
Wow. And how did they install them?
With a big old crane and picked them up and dropped them down. And they made a big deal out of it. They would set them and take pictures. But the very last one, which is the caveman, I'd probably finished it a couple of weeks earlier, and they were slow. They set stones when they set stones. And at the end of the day, one day the master goes, they want to talk to you. I go, who wants to talk to me? They go, they do. Go by the door. Okay. And there's the New York Times, and there's the head of the church, there's everybody, and they're getting ready to set the last gargoyle. Well, thanks for warning me. I come out there, I'm covered with stone dust, my hat. I mean, I look like somebody off the street. And they go, okay. And, and they take pictures and then they take the stone up and they set it. And, the next day I'm embarrassed and there's a front page of the New York Times and I'm going, oh, if nobody's, because they don't, the master did not really appreciate other people getting any press. So there was no warning that was going to happen. But the gargoyles were awesome. The angels were great. The angels, because you were able to do different things. I put my face on one. I put a baseball cap on. Well, actually, I put a yarmulke on one. And, and that was acceptable. The master would look at you. If you couldn't carve something flat, and he could look across the carving shed, and he could tell if something was, was out of square. I mean, his eye was amazing. And ultimately, all our eyes became that way. But I couldn't believe it at first. From across the room, he could, and that's sort of how he talked. Is he sort of yelled at you in these guttural tones? I gotta fix that. But if you did something creative that was way out of line, they let it go, and that's part of the history of the cathedral. There's, one of the best tours is to go around and go, that's the one that did this because this guy was mad at his girlfriend, and this guy did. And there's all these stories of every carving has a story, and so it was awesome to have some of the old guys come in and point out other things in the cathedral because it's just this living storybook.
Wow.
Is that true like for cathedrals historically, or is that unique to the?
No, that's true for cathedrals historically. The cathedral was always used as since people were illiterate, they put all the lessons of life in it. So, the gargoyles were going to come down if you're not good. And, the patrons were the exalted ones that, they were the beautiful statues. The angels, served a purpose. And of course, all the ornaments served architectural purposes for the weight and keep the water off the building. But the master carver and was the holder of all of the skill and the information. And, they were able to do a lot of, all the cathedrals have something on it that's like, oh, that one, look, that guy's, doing something in rebellion to the church. So the cathedral has those, every cathedral has those. The National Cathedral has, current ones.
There's also just the practical fact that, like, if you're doing your 50th angel, you're gonna change it a little bit.
And
have some fun with it.
And honestly, that was the greatest learning tool, is because you did things over and over and over. I mean,
right.
There was 5,000 crockets to be done when I got there. And there's 4 on a stone usually. And well, the first time I did a crocket, it took me, let's say, a week. Well, I was able to do, by the time I left, I could do 4 crockets in a day, one of those stones. And you could do one blindfolded because you'd done hundreds of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the rosettes, you could make up your own ones, and that was fun to do. But at some point, you just go, I can't come up with anything. I just don't want. And so then you would really look forward to, when something else came along. But, you carved what they were ready for. And, it wasn't like, today I'm going to carve, I want to carve a gargoyle, sir. It was, there's next. Yeah.
Wow. And after your time at the cathedral, what was next?
I took a kind of sabbatical. I ended up at Crazy Horse Mountain, sort of as an artist in residence. And I met a couple of guys that introduced me to Jimmy Borglum, who's the grandson of Gutzon Borglum. Mm. So I got to hang out for a really nice extended period of a couple of years in South Dakota and Colorado, hanging out with this sort of thing. And then I ended up in the movie business, and I was doing kind of, somebody would say, can you do this? I go, I just carved a fucking cathedral. I think I can figure out how to paint. So for a couple of years, I just kind of bounced around and just kind of reveled in my freedom after being so disciplined for 4 years at the cathedral. And ultimately, I ended up back in Fort Wayne for the health of a family member, and I got contacted for a commission, and then I got contacted for another commission. And after every commission, I would go to France, or I'd go to Italy, or I'd go, I just would take off. But the commissions kept on coming, and then I developed some relationships that allowed me to really kind of advance and push some of the work. And it also allowed me to live where I wanted to live. I always kept a studio, but I'd had studios in other cities. And the commissions went for, up and currently, except for now I'm doing the public stuff, where I kind of wanted to make the change of working for crazy rich people and working for crazy governments. So, it's just, I'm always looking for the challenge. And with stone carving, there is always a challenge. You always got to figure out something, and, you get addicted to that process.
Very cool.
Can you tell us about what some of your favorite memories are of, tell us about a couple of those commissions that are particularly memorable?
Post cathedral commissions?
Yeah.
Oh God, I did. Somebody wanted a fountain. They had contracted a stone carver from Indianapolis to do a fountain, and it turned out to be just awful. I mean, it was one of those, you looked at it, and so this guy, the husband and wife, were doing some stained glass work, and there happened to be a guy in Fort Wayne that's a stained glass master that was doing stuff on their house, and they asked him one day, do you know anybody that can carve stone? And he goes, well, as a matter of fact, I know a guy that just came back from the National Cathedral. Oh, I want to talk to him. So anyway, we got in contact, and they showed me what they had, and they said, can you fix this? I go, no. I said, it's too ugly. But if you want something new, I'll come up with an idea. And both of them, the husband and wife, looked like I had just given them the greatest gift in the world, because they wanted something specific. And that's what it turned out. If you look at it, that was Alfred Grendel Wim Manor. That was a fountain. And it's this thing sitting in the, here, this is a fuller picture. Okay. So that one started a process. You see the,
oh yeah.
And
I'll take a picture and share.
Yeah. And that started a process when they kept on going, oh, we love this. Can you do and they created this world that they right in their house, on their land. And because I just come from the cathedral, I had all these sort of tricks that I could do that, architecturally. And they just loved all that stuff. I mean, anything, I could throw in really crazy They would give me kind of a cue of what they want, and then I could come up with something that sort of suited their nature and their personality. And they let me do pretty much whatever I wanted, as long as, you know, it was that kind of relationship. So there's 20 years of those interesting projects. Mm-hmm. But I always like the one I'm working on now. You know, it's everybody said, "What's your favorite?" You know, my favorite is the one I'm going to be doing next. And I don't have favorites. They're all my children. They're all flawed. None of them are perfect. And, you know, I can see that in every one of them. So they're all there for me to learn and then advance it and do it better next time. And the question I always get is, how do you feel about something being there for everybody to see for a long time? And honest to God, I can't tell you the right answer. I have a fake answer. Oh, it's wonderful. But it just makes me laugh. Honestly, I giggle every time I see my pieces around town. And
well, what's the warranty on one of those?
500 years.
Okay.
The stone. I said, look, you know, it will last a lot longer, but I can guarantee you for 5, because, you know, there's existing things easily 500 years that haven't. So that's but I'm so used to seeing my work out there. Like, you know, I got thrown into the fire the first day I became an artist was at the cathedral. You know, you're doing stuff and it goes right up, and people watched you every day. You know, thousands of people a day were watching you carve. So I built up this sort of invisibility cloak that doesn't matter what they say, it doesn't matter what they know. You're just having the time of your life. And yet when somebody, you know, there'd be people at the cathedral that would come and they'd want to watch you, and they'd say, I just want to touch you.
Oh, wow.
You're doing God's work or something, right? It would, you know, your head could explode if you let it. So for a lot of the time there, it was control that you're already a high because you're doing the thing you love doing, and it's, you know, trying to figure it out. And then if you have the complication of this unbridled adulation that you could find anywhere, if you said, hey, I work at the cathedral, you know, you get 100 people around you. That was a really difficult thing for me. So I just blocked all that out. I thought, there's, you know, this is normal. You do it. This is normal. It's not a big deal. It's going to last forever. It's not a big deal that everybody sees it. The only thing that matters is I'm enjoying it. Yeah. You know, I'm a selfish guy. I'm doing this for me. And hey, if you like it, yay, thumbs up too. But ultimately it comes down to, this is, you know, I'm fulfilling what I think my role right now is.
Do you have a preference of carving in front of an audience or in solitude?
I go blind when I'm carving. A bomb could go off. You could have a party.
The invisibility cloak.
Yeah, it just once I'm working, it does not matter. It's really strange because I'm here by myself all the time. You know, you get a visitor now and then. But when I'm working, you know, people could come and go and I wouldn't know. And I would just be like, especially when, you know, you're working and I got a couple hours, I'm just going to be plowing away. Or when you're, you know, so deep into something that, you know, that's it. You're just in a really deep, concentrative place.
Very good.
You mentioned meeting or working with Tim Doyle before you went to the cathedral. Did you work with him when you got back to Fort Wayne?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I did use him for knowledge. That guy had, you know, he was the last connection to the last great master of, you know, American master, Jack Kendall. And Jack Kendall was considered, even by the Italians, to be a, you know, a magical carver, one of the fastest there ever was. And he did things people still go, we don't know how he did that. And Tim was one of his last apprentices. And so when I first decided I wanted to try doing it, Tim sort of, you know, he sort of did it the same way he was taught by this guy. So I kind of had a natural ability with the air hammer. I mean, I picked it up pretty quick and I was able to understand it and do it. And I did a piece that, I mean, that's the piece that got me into the Chicago Art Institute. And it's the piece that when the master, I had one piece stone carving. When I had my interview with the master, he goes, "Oh, that's pretty good," you know. And that was it. That was as much stone carving as I had done. But Tim told me and explained to me that there are rules. There are not rules, but there's procedures, and there's this huge body of knowledge, and it's not in a book, and it's taught or it's stolen. I always thought you got to steal it. I'd see a technique. I heard you, Matthew, the other day talking. I was listening to the recent one because I thought, what's this? And you were saying something about how you learned from Bob, and Bob self-taught, and wherever Bob got his thing, and then he had to learn to pass it on to you. And there's these certain lineages. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's so interesting because, you've come to your knowledge through a circuitous route that's very different than the way Walter Arnold got his knowledge. And I've got mine somewhere in between that but I have a lineage of Jack Kendall and Tim Doyle who were really, really technically brilliant.
Right.
I'll never be, as technically brilliant as them. But I learned enough to go, okay, I can figure this out. I can do it. And Tim was interesting.
Yeah. The couple of times that I met Tim, I was really, he seemed to really preach the gospel of efficient use of motion.
Yeah.
It seemed like no wasted moves.
Exactly. And that, I believe, is the Jack Kendall thing, because the myth about him was that, how did you do that so fast? How did you get from that block to this finished piece? And he had these things that he did, and speed and efficiency. And that's Tim wouldn't. When I first got to the cathedral and I could actually carve, a full, maybe 12-inch run without stopping, and somebody'd look up and go, oh, that guy, because when the first guys first show up, they're going, wee, wee, wee. You said another thing the other day. I don't like the sound of that. Dude, I hear that. I can hear an air hammer. I'm going, at the cathedral, there's 12 air hammers or 6 air hammers. And you hear the dude that's got it too high and it's out of control, and kind of go up to him and say, hey, you hear that? No, that's wrong. It's so sound. I mean, there's so much sound that I'm connected to when I'm carving, especially, going from roughing out something down to the very, final detail. I've carved angels' eyebrows with my little 3/4 hammer. And it's going ding, ding. I've got that piston so slow, but you hear that piston blasting in somebody, and then you can just tell it's totally out of control. They're not. So that when you said that sound thing, man, I had so many flashbacks of the cathedral, of having to walk over to the new people going, that's too loud. You hear that?
It's not singing the right song.
Yeah, you're off pitch, pal.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of pitching, yeah. I mean, where did you learn how to pitch? Did Reagan, Bob show you guys how to, use the big pitches and the big hammers?
Yeah, never the massive ones. I'll look at some blocks and I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, I would pitch, maybe 6-7 inches, but never the big blocks. It's just amazing to me.
It is. We had the master's relative of him. He didn't speak English at all. He was Italian, but grew up in Argentina and did a lot of the Argentina, the carvings you see in Argentina. And the only English thing he could say was, "Oh, Joe Montana, oh, superstar." It was back when those days. Oh, Joe Montana. He could pitch like nobody's business. He couldn't carve, an angel to save his life, and he couldn't carve, anything artistic. But man, you put a pitch in his hand. I seen him lift a ring off of a finial, by pitching, and I've never seen anything like that in my life.
Wow.
So there's these guys that can pitch like nobody's business. That
it's an art. It's truly an art.
Yeah, and at the cathedral, that was sort of a point of pride. Two things: could you pitch? How good of a pitch are you? And can you rip an apple in half with your hands?
Well, can you, Cary?
Oh, I sure can, and I'll never forget the day I did it. And it was early on at lunchtime. We all would sit at a big table, and it was a pecking order, and the master was at one place, and you sat in your same spot every day, and you were nervous because the master was a little insane. And he would grab an apple. There would always be an bowl of apples at the end of the meal, grab it, and without any sort of, hesitation, just grab it and split it in half like this and eat in half. And, sure enough, people would go and they'd reach in and do it. And nobody could do it. And I thought, fuck, someday I am going to do that.
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so one day I
Rip
practiced at
apples.
home. I practiced at home. This was not. And man, we was at lunchtime and the master picked up an apple and split it in half. And I just casually grabbed in there and split it in half and chewed on it. And there was 5 faces, just jaws dropped. And, nobody's, like,
The apprentice has graduated.
but there was the weird thing about that whole apprenticeship program, and the pecking order was traditional and it was medieval in a lot of ways. And
so when you say pitching, so how big? You said big pitchers, Matt, or
like a pitch that's maybe
big?
The face of it is the size of your hand, from your middle finger to the back of your wrist. That's pretty big. It's maybe 5 or 6 inches.
And that's how wide it would be.
Yeah. And then you use a really heavy hammer.
Huh.
Did y'all have a name for the marks? Like if you didn't get a clean shot and you had to go back and point it out?
You mean if you
messed up?
Oh, no, it was just like...
Yeah, right.
That's the name for it.
And we never used saws back then. I only recently started using saws to rough shit out. And it's like, whoa, why didn't we use saws? That would have been a lot faster.
Saws are your friend.
Also for pitching too, because you could put a saw line in and then pitch out. We had to cut it with a chisel down before we pitched it out.
But you mostly worked with pneumatic tools.
Yeah.
The pitching would have been done by hand.
Yeah. And like my pitch, my generally pitch is probably the 3-inch one, and the normal kind of, I think, is about a 5 or 6 pound hammer. But I mean, you could still wail on it and lift off a pretty big piece of stone, only because I've seen it done. Now I don't carve like I used to, so I'm not pitching as much. But you always make that first blood sacrifice, when you throw your hand and you like splatter the blood of your right this thing and. Okay, well, that's at least your first blood sacrifice.
Put some dust in that, right? It's sanitary.
Yeah. Well, of course, when you use those pointed pitching chisels with your air hammer, those leave those giant, gullies and ravines that usually by the end of the day, my hands are nice and ripped up. But I like that feeling. I don't know. It's weird. You got to mix the blood and the limestone.
The feeling of the hands being ripped up?
Well, just when you first start a piece and, you're roughing out and there's, you go, I'm just blasting out and you kind of get into that Zen mode where the stone is flying all over your shoulder and they look like Indian heads, they're perfect size pieces. And that's a great feeling. And oftentimes, when you first go in there, after the pitching, there's these rough edges and I get enthusiastic. I don't wear gloves. I don't know how people wear gloves. I don't know whether you guys did it at Bob's place or you guys do it, but I can't wear gloves. So there tends to be blood on the bottom sides of my hand that runs along the stone. In the beginning, when you're done, it's, by the time it's done, there's no more blood.
Adds to the personal connection.
It does.
Right, yeah.
I wear gloves, but I cut all the fingers out.
Oh.
But only in the winter. It's too hot.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was winter in Texas, honestly.
That's an old piano player trick.
Yeah. When it's real cold here, I take my air hammers and stick them on the radiator because that's what we did at the cathedral. They come in the morning, there was cold air hammers and you stick them on the radiators, and in about 10 minutes, that's nice and hot.
All pneumatic here in what you do these days?
All pneumatic, yeah. Yeah, I've got a big compressor and I actually, a couple of years ago, I always worked with a little portable one, and I would just run it until I, croaked. A couple of years ago, there's a pneumatic distributor across the street here. So I thought, I'll go over there, and they had a couple of rebuilds, and so I've got a compressor here that I could probably run 5 or 6 air hammers. I thought, well, it'd be kind of fun to. I'm making this outdoor studio now. It'd be kind of fun to have a couple of guys outside and do something fun.
That would be fun.
I like to have fun here.
That's good.
This is
good.
Yeah.
Can you take us on an audio tour of your studio?
Yeah.
How hard would that be for you?
I guess. I mean, you mean just like.
Yeah, just
take
tell us
us
what
metaphorically through, and then I can probably interspace some pictures.
So let me give you the sense. My property is on a corner. There's a red brick house that was built pre-Civil War, and connected to it is a metal building behind it. It's 22 by 40. And in the 60s, this was a really bad neighborhood. And so they tore down a lot of the houses. And this was an alternator workshop for a number of years. And then when I bought it, it had been converted into a hydraulic loading dock kind of system thing, which is perfect because I needed a hydraulic loading dock, and they built the units here. Yeah. So my shop is essentially a metal building that I've separated into 3 bays. And the bay that we're sitting in now is the luxury bay, and I've got my couch and it's where my computers are. It's where I sit and do my.
Yeah, we got the incense burning. It's
I
good.
got pictures. I've got a 3D printer, my dog, some rugs, and then the middle shop is like the wood shop and welding shop and making stuff. And then the 3rd bay is dedicated purely to carving, and there's an overhead door with a hydraulic loading dock, so I can bring in the stones in and out. And it's a 13-foot ceiling, so I've got a aluminum gantry that I actually got from Walter Arnold years ago that I used to lift. And I have 2 hydraulic tables that raise up 4 feet for,
You recommend those?
Oh, if you don't have a hydraulic table with a roller, I don't know what we call those rolling things that, turntable.
Yeah.
Turntable.
Oh, turntable. Okay.
Yeah. So I can put a 1,000-pound block on my turntable and never have to move it. I just roll it around, and my table holds 2,000 pounds. So I'm good for a ton on a lot of things, and I've got a pallet jack to bring things in and out. But it's a space that I can adapt to whatever project I'm doing. I've cleaned out the whole thing and done welding in here. I've done the last welding job was in there, and I've brought in, gigantic pieces of stone into the studio. And that's why I want to do something really big. And that's why I'm making that outdoor shop.
There you go. Really big.
Really big. Well, I got a 40-foot sculpture going on, but it's 100 pieces of stone. I just want to bring a big piece of stone in here. It's just like the old days.
Just whack it. You mainly work in Indiana limestone?
I do. It's just what I'm so familiar with. I've carved marble. I have some pieces that are out and about and collectors that are, art pieces, but I wouldn't be comfortable doing anything super architectural in marble. I don't want to deal with that, learning that and doing. Matter of fact, most of the design, I'm just all the architectural carving is being done by the mill now. For a lot of these pieces, I just draw up, like you can see all the models there, and then I'll send them the CAD files, and some of it the CNC machine will rough out, and some of it they have carvers in it that can do. I mean, there's nothing there that simple carver could do. And then if there's anything that I got to do, then it comes here, and I'll dress it up.
Gotcha.
And you mentioned a 3D printer.
Yeah, I just bought a 3D printer because I got a bunch of projects, and I like to be able to, since I'm making my 3D models anyway. This way, this is one I'm hoping to do a 25-foot cat, but like then there's they help me sort of visualize things, and I can look at it and go, any trick that I can to help visualize before something's made. I like. Yeah, I put a lot of my work into Cinema 4D, which is essentially you making a movie, and I create the environment that the scene is, that the sculpture is going to be in. So I usually get now it's a lot easier because Google, you can just download a Google GIS information and rebuild it in your computer, and then set your sculpture in the middle of it, and then render it the way you want. It's not as easy as that, but essentially.
Say that again. I totally did not I did not follow.
He's making it sound a lot more easier than it is. Okay. I know.
So
don't forget you're talking to stone carvers here.
Okay, this is part of my stone carving. I design on the computer using Rhinoceros. It's a architectural and industrial engineer design tool, and it creates 3D models. Then I put that model into another program called Cinema 4D. And if you really wanted to, you can make an entire movie in Cinema 4D. It's motion graphics. It's the most. It's at that highest level that you could make any animation you wanted.
CGI.
It's really, CGI. Yeah. Thank you. It's CGI. Okay. It allows me to essentially have, if I wanted to, have Hollywood in my computers. So what I'll do is I'll take, since I'm doing a lot of public work, I'll just take that block, whatever the area is. I used to have to download just, street lines. You could get a street shot from Google, but now all that information, all of the elevations and street lines and where buildings are, is all downloadable and accessible through a bunch of different programs.
In
and so I can
3D?
In 3D.
That's really scary. Anyway.
It's cool because this is what I do. I can create the environment in my computer, put myself in the middle of it, and then ponder how I want to sculpt in that. And so I'm doing a roundabout. They're putting a whole new traffic circle in. Well, I could, with all that information, I put the whole neighborhood in my computer, and then I plopped down my design and go, does that work there?
Can you, I don't mean to interrupt, but
that's okay.
Can you recreate the sunlight through the day?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. I can.
You can rotate it and see like what the sunlight is looking like at noon.
I can drive a car into it and crash it and watch what happens when each piece falls down. Literally, I'm telling you, I can animate. I could animate each piece being set on top of each other. And when I go to the engineers, they fucking love that.
Sure they do.
My engineer goes, because engineers go, this is a building and it's it can't fall. But when I'm able to take in my designs and be able for them to see inside of it, and then we can discuss what the best method is. And then I learn with each project that I learn from the engineer, I can pre-solve it on the next project. So all of these tools are helpful for me to do really large scale work. I mean, the reason I started with the computer was I used to draw everything out. And I did a fountain. I drew out an 8-foot wall, and every line I'm drawing, and I want to change that. Now I got to erase 40 lines and redraw them. And I had a commission to do a 20-foot by 20-foot by 20-foot round gazebo. And I thought, how the am I going to draw that? I mean, and so I learned how to do this rhinoceros, and I could literally draw it on the computer, and then was able to visualize everything, and any changes I want to make, I could change. And I started that. I think I've been in 2004 is the first time I used cinema or rhinoceros. So for 20 years, I'm at the point now where it is an absolute integral part of my work.
So on that gazebo, when you sculpted it out in rhinoceros, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did you do all of the busts, the keystone?
Yes. So I had those shipped to my studio with, without the faces. They were just blocked in.
But I mean, did you sculpt it in rhinoceros first?
No.
Okay.
I sculpted them actually in real life. I was living in New York at the time, and I hired a kid from the Art Institute, the Figurative Art Institute, to make clay masks of Jesus, Mary, Lao Tse, and Buddha. And then I cast him, and I did my little fixing up what I needed to do, and then knew I could use that to point onto those big keystones that have the faces in them.
So the rhinoceros is more for just the geometry.
Yes.
The shape.
Yes. But are you ready for this now? In Cinema 4D and in Rhinoceros, they have sculpting tools. And I have sculpted in the past to use as a visual tool, but now you can actually sculpt it, and then if you can 3D print it. Wow. Or you can have the CNC machine rough it out, but I can now sculpt in a 3D.
Can you sculpt reductively, or is it just additive? Or
no,
both?
blue. Yeah,
you can do reductively.
Yeah, you both. It's so both, amazing. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Blender? Blender is a free one.
No,
yeah, right. No. And you can. So there are variations of that Blender of complications and complexities. But the idea is that you start with a mesh ball, and you manipulate that mesh ball by either pulling or pushing, or adding or subtracting. And honest to God, I've played around with it a lot. I'm ultimately someday going to have. That's the next thing. I'm doing architectural stuff that I'm breaking down up into small enough pieces to have them fabricated by a machine. That's a very inorganic thing, but I'd like to be able to try to do it with organic shapes. So that's kind of the next step. But yeah, you can do it. And people are doing it, and they're making really ugly sculptures.
I'm sure they
because
are.
it's easy. Because it's just another tool to make an easy, ugly sculpture. However, it's another tool if you want to make something, that no one's ever done before. I mean, for me, each time I go, I want to do something that no one's ever done before. What can I do? And how can I do it? And, all these new technology just gives me another way to figure out something or another way to make something that I couldn't before.
A tool in the toolbox.
It's another tool in the toolbox. Exactly.
So in your own
Absolutely.
practice, you said in the beginning that how things started with you was that you sat down and you had this piece of limestone and a screwdriver and a hammer. And then, we talked about a lot of different aspects of your practice. How do you decide? So if the heart of it is the connection that you have to the stone, how do you decide, what things are going to be helpful to that in the long run and what things aren't, in terms of what to pursue? Does that make sense?
For me, it's all driven by. Again, it's incredibly selfish. It's all what satisfies me. If I'm going to do a job, I got to be satisfied too. I'm not doing this for money. It's too hard to work. It's very hard work. So what am I getting out of it? And for me, it's the learning something new and to be able to apply a new trick. And, I'm not at the cathedral anymore. I can't steal any more ideas. I can't steal anymore. Oh, that's how you do that how did he get that shadow? I still don't know how the master made it. The master could make a leaf look like it's blowing in the wind. And I'm telling you, that's, I've been working on that for 40 years and I still can't do it like he can. I still can't. I can't. I can make something, I can give it personality. That's what what they'll say about my work, I think, is whatever it is, there's some expression of personality, whether, it's really obvious, in some of these, or subtly in a lot of my architectural stuff, I put in things that if you speak an abstract language that you would be able to pick out. So it's really all about self-entertainment. And so I had no idea the stone.
Like to learn as well.
Yeah. I'm autodidactic. This totally suits my nature. People always say, "Oh, stone carving isn't hard. Oh, can I learn?" Blah blah. And that's the wrong question. Is it in your nature? Because if it's not in your nature, it doesn't matter. You could. And I've seen people that it wasn't in their nature, and they tried as hard as they could, and it's not your nature.
I bet the ship has sailed, but did you ever think about taking those 3D models and selling them as NFTs?
Non-fungible tokens on there?
That's, I don't go into this to sell things, but if I did go into this to sell things, man, there's so many ways that there's suckers out there. Yes, there's a lot of ways.
I think those suckers have come and gone.
They're still out there.
Are they really?
Yeah, the art world, it just draws them in because everybody wants to be a part of it. And if you have no talent and you have money, that's the way you become a part of it. People don't want your work. They want you. And that's what I've learned. And, they want a piece of you. And that's the kind of people I want to work with. Unless you want something that's unique and specific, don't come to me.
Yeah. And you want to get, my experience is that I'm happy to give a part of myself.
What
else
you got to do?
Yeah, right. I got plenty of it.
It's, I didn't do the family thing until I was, quote, semi-retired. So I was able to really live selfishly and do it purely how and way I wanted to do it. And if I didn't want to do it in Fort Wayne, I packed up and I moved to Italy to do it. And if I didn't want to do it there, I packed up and went to New York City a number of times to do it. So, or Colorado to do it. So for me, it was just the avenue that allowed me to live the life that I wanted to live. Post marriage, and now once I learned how to be a daddy and a husband, then I needed to change my work because I physically didn't want to do and couldn't do my last big commission was that Grim Reaper, the headstone. And I broke my jaw on that. I banged my shoulder. It was just, my body started breaking down. I thought, I don't know how many more of these you're going to be able to do. And so the idea was to sort of figure out how to use my technology and then do some public stuff that would take less of a toll on me physically.
Mm-hmm.
You don't live forever.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you knew Simon Verity, who just passed away recently.
I did.
How did you know him? Did you work with him?
I met him the first time is when I was at the National Cathedral, and the New York St. John's they came to visit us.
Okay.
And it was when who was the dude that walked across the wire? Philippe.
Philippe. Yeah. Right.
He was actually working at St. John's at the time. So they all the carvers came up in a bus, and they came to visit us at the cathedral. And they brought T-shirts, and they were real nice, and they wondered at our air hammers, and they couldn't believe we were using air hammers because they didn't use them there. And Simon was the head master carver then. And so, whenever I would go to New York, of which I did a lot in the early 90s, I would stop up at the St. John's and, see him. He was sort of there, and he had a little space. And I always thought, it'd be fun to have a studio in New York and go up here. And when I finally decided to move back to New York, I actually looked at getting space up at the cathedral. They were, I think it was just right around the fire or something. But anyway, he had to move out. So I got a studio out in Red Hook. But I would just see him in New York, and I knew that he was just a guy that, that was his purpose. That's what he did. And, I can picture him in a kind of a natty sweater with stone dust and kind of walking around St. John's. But I do recall that first time that they all came to Washington, and I'm trying to think who else was in that group. I don't know if Amy was in that group then. She might have been, but
were the Kincannon brothers?
Yeah,
they were.
And I'm pretty sure what's his name? That's in Ohio.
Fair play.
Nick. Yeah. I'm certain Nick was there. I think because ultimately, I think he took Simon's job or something. Was that? Do you know?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. But so it was the beginning of my sort of whole thing. It was probably 1986. So whenever I'd be in, ultimately, if I was in that neighborhood, I'd stop in. I'd just see what was going on there. I have, I don't know if anybody knows this, but, originally that was done in granite, the St. John's.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Gutzon Borglum's brother, who was a sculptor, who became a painter because his brother was better sculptor, was a painter in Europe. But he got pieces done. He has gargoyles on St. John's that are done in marble. And when they decided to finish the cathedral, they said, well, we can't get this granite anymore. So we're going to use limestone. So we're going to clad over what we can, and then the new work will be limestone. But it was originally all started in I'm pretty sure it was granite.
So there's a granite core that's still there?
That's still there. Yeah, a lot of the groundwork is granite.
Wow.
That's interesting.
But I don't know how many people actually know that. I can't think of Gutzon's brother's name, but has at least one, maybe two of gargoyles on that building. And that was because he was jealous of his brother.
Well, that's interesting.
Well, that's my little fun fact for yeah. It's good to have friends who have connections to historical pasts. I can't tell you how cool it was to be in Gutzon Borglum's studio. He had his shop. It was a huge barn, and there's all the casts of Mount Rushmore are in this barn, the original ones, and there's pieces of his pointing equipment and a bunch of his stuff. And I spent a summer out there, and I was carving in there, and I'm thinking, it's Gutzon Borglum's shop.
No big deal.
Yeah,
No big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's so many questions I have in my mind, like how's your technique changed over the years? Do you use some of the stuff that you create in Rhinoceros to show to potential clients and say, hey, does that help the buy-in for projects? Helps. There's so many questions.
So if you're going to do work that someone's going to pay for, whether it's for a private client or whether it's for a public thing, they want to know what it's going to look like. Mm-hmm. And the best way you can do that is learn how to render. And you can render your models in Rhino. You can really render them well in that Cinema 4D, but there's plenty of programs. I mean, I'll use Illustrator, and they need to see your competence. They need to see your final, what it's going to look like in the environment. And honestly, when you can show them these sort of things, it kind of proves something to them. I couldn't do it without. I mean, I don't, to me, it's like I couldn't climb on the roof without a ladder. I couldn't do these jobs if I couldn't do this representation, because essentially I'm doing all the work ahead of time in my head. And now I'm putting it in the computer, I'm making it so I can visually see it. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, I got to make that, let's increase that by an inch, or let me spread. And, you can do that. You can do that very easily, and you can make copies, and you can do, I'm on version 18.2 on this piece. So that's, every version you sort of have a change, and so I have my digital files. I probably have, it's amazing how you have to manage your digital files, because every project creates massive amount of data, just massive amounts. I mean, before I used to have all these storage things, and now everything's up in the cloud. But it's great. I can take my laptop, and I could come visit any one of you and continue to work and do everything I need to do, except, get my hands on the stone itself. But right now, most of my time is not on the stone. Mm-hmm. It used to be I carved every day. That's not what I'm doing at this point.
Mm. Very cool.
I'm ready to carve again. I can't wait to pull my.
There are some things in progress back here. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I mean, I will never not carve. I mean, it's still that same kid that's put that limestone between my feet and hit it, and even just talking about it, I want to be around it, and I don't know what it is, but it's proven after 40 years that there's truly some bond between the stone and myself. At the cathedral, at lunchtime, we'd go lie out after we eat. After 15 minutes, I'd lie down on a flat piece of limestone, and it would be warm from the sun. It could be winter, and I would just take a 5-minute nap on the limestone, and somebody would go, "Isn't that hard?" No, it's the softest thing in the world. It's just so it just it's an unexplainable phenomena for me. Again, if you would have said when I was 25 years old, in 2 years you're going to have this happen, no, that's just not that wasn't the path that I was taking.
And it's made a life.
Made a life. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Here's the 3 rules I set up for myself.
Here we go.
Right. Never have to ask to go to the bathroom. Never have to ask to go to lunch. Never have to ask, can I take a vacation?
Right.
Stone carving fits all 3 of those requirements. No, I don't have to ask any of those things. I can bring my dog. I got my dog here. Oh, sorry, Peter. Yeah. So, there's a certain, people go, what does it take to do what you do? It takes a really healthy dose of you attitude.
Great.
It does, because you have to be able to follow what is right for you. And sometimes that takes a little bit of fuck you-ness, because somebody goes, oh, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, but
I'll do what I want.
I want to do what I need. I need, and it's like, I need to carve. I need to do this. I don't want to do this. I want to be sitting in, the Bahamas drinking a Mai Tai, but this is what I need to do.
Yeah. Well, Fort Wayne's pretty close to the Bahamas.
Pretty close to the Bahamas. Yeah, pretty soon it's going to, the sun goes down. We'll have a nice sunset.
Pretty good. Yeah. Pretty good. Well, that brings us close to about an hour.
Yeah, kind of. Probably.
What a great way to sort of, I think, land the plane on this conversation. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like those the 3 rules in life.
3 rules in life, to be happy.
Thank you, Cary, so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. It's good to hear your voice again, Matt, and it's nice to meet you, Bethany. I always enjoyed Matt's company. I went out to Texas carved stone. He was working there a number of years ago, and I had a couple of big statues to do, and I was just going to ship the stone out there and do them. And I thought, how fun would it be just to be out there? So the one or two times that I was out there, I thought, how cool! I love that Texas carved shop.
Definitely don't do it in the summer.
No.
Brutal. I'm so jealous of you northern climb.
It's really, I tell you, Fort Wayne has really benefited from the global warming situation.
Yeah.
Our summers are way more pleasant. We have way more sunshine and not extreme. And the winters have been, knock on wood, the last couple of years.
Mild, right?
Mild. I've been, because it can get pretty brutal in here. And I've been able to keep it warm enough.
Nice.
Right. Matt, are you staying okay over there? Do we need to send
it's
ice?
basically just, I get up at 4:30.
Oh my gosh.
Try to get to work by 5:30 so I can break at 12, and then, it's just, but it's gonna be in the high 90s next week, so we're excited about that.
You have
really looking forward to it.
Do you have big fans that move the air?
I have 2 fans. I've actually started this new thing, and it's actually working really well. I am freezing containers of water and putting them in front of the fans.
That's a great idea.
And it's just because I tried to get a swamp cooler, but because there's so much dust, they just would they'd give a last gasp after about 2 months and be like, you killed me.
I never minded carving when it was hot. I just had to have moving air on me. So I always had a fan. But when I'm carving, it could be, 100 degrees. The second I stop carving, I'm like, oh, it's so hot. I can't stand it. Oh, but when you're carving, it's like, oh, okay, that's just fine.
Yeah, if the air's moving, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But it's when you stop and you stand up and you're like, oh, my God.
And then Matt goes and takes a nap on the block of ice, probably, right?
No, I get it back in the freezer to get it ready for the next day, and then I go and I take a nap, but I don't turn on the AC so that I can go back to work at about 6. And if I haven't been in the AC, then it feels nice and cool by 6. But if I go into the AC, then I'm done. That's it.
I just AC'd my office last year. I thought I'm just gonna have one space in this metal box that is nice and cool. Mm-hmm. So this room gets nice and cool if we needed it.
Well, we've got the windows and doors open right now. Feels good, right?
Yeah, it's a perfect day
nice.
for it. Yeah. This morning was spectacular. It was just like the sky was so blue and there was all this shade out and it was nice and cool. And I was doing outdoor stuff, but it's really worked out well.
Cary, thanks for having me out here. Thanks for having us, Matt and Bethany, virtually with us. Fantastic.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Stone Carvers Guild podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and we hope that you will find us online at stonecarversguild.org. There you can find photos showing some of the things that we discussed today, additional information about our guest, and if you're so inclined, ways to get more involved with the Guild and our ongoing activities. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, we hope that you will subscribe and rate us on the podcaster of your choice. 5 stars, please. We'll be back in a month with a new episode, so until then, keep your hammer up and your chisel sharp.